Well, hello and welcome to day number 4 of the EMS Leadership Summit. My name is Robbie McHugh.
And I am Lisa Geritzi, and we are excited to be here for the daily debrief. I can't believe it's already day 4. I feel like it was a minute ago that it was the kickoff session,
And I
but
think that
we're
was
so
the
excited.
fastest 5-minute countdown ever. From 5 minutes to 30
Well
seconds.
done, Robbie.
All good.
Well done. And we are so excited for our panel tonight. As you know, if you've been watching each day, we invite the speakers from the day's presentations to join us with for the daily debrief, so we can answer your questions. We can answer some of the questions that come in and just have a great conversation with the amazing presenters and speakers and experts that we have gathered for this 5-day summit. It blows me away.
Today was quite the lineup. Ray Barashansky talking emotional intelligence, Battalion Chief Corey Key talking about their system. We had Mick Gunderson, Candace McDonald, Wendy Lund, Asbel Montez, and
No, not Asbel, Scott.
I'm sorry, and Scott Moore, my outdated sheet because we changed the schedule. And we've got Scott Moore in the green room as well as Corey Key. So excited to bring those folks on in just a few moments, but wanted to cover a few things for folks that if you haven't yet had a chance to watch sessions today, we're just going to bring you through how to access those sessions in our virtual exhibitor hall. So if you visit EMS Leadership Academy, or I'm sorry, EMSLeadershipSummit.com/exhibit, you'll see our virtual exhibitor hall here. And right in booth number 1, you can access the session. So the first tab is for the first button is for your free pass holders. And those sessions are available for 24 hours. So we have until 8 a.m. Eastern for day number 4's lineup of sessions. If you have run tight on time and you want access to all the sessions from the week and you want lifetime access, we include that as an all access pass. We're trying to keep this really affordable for less than $100 because we want people to be able to access this level of great leadership information and develop their own leadership library. And we want to make it really affordable. We have our PDF of the playbook. So that's a conference playbook with some articles and resources and the full schedule. And if you've already upgraded to an all access pass, you can log in here with this button. So again, just showing folks around the virtual exhibitor hall and really giving some love to our sponsors that are out there. They make this this conference happen. So we so appreciate them.
Yeah, because of them, we're able to have it be free and low cost. And just like when you go to an in-person summit, you go around, you maybe grab candy here and there or get some information. Can't get the candy out of these, but Robbie and his team have built this beautiful exhibit hall where each and every one of the booths is a interactive opportunity. So they have videos, and the before operational stress, which is on your screen right now. They are doing a grand prize giveaway. So if you go and you just fill out the information and learn, you'll get the chance to be in the drawing, which we're going to do live on Saturday, which is tomorrow. So please go there and fill out your name. And this is a terrific program, the Before Operational Stress. I love the idea of helping people before they've gotten stressed, before they have some kind of trauma, to really give people the tools. And it's an evidence-based program. And they have for Canada and US, correct?
Yes, and there's a demo for Canada and the US, specifically written for first responders and different types of first responders. And we really appreciate Dr. Megan McLaren for their support at the Wayfound Mental Health Group and the Before Operational Stress team.
Yeah, she did a presentation, I think it was yesterday's lineup. She really, very powerful. The other one I think really love, well, we love all our sponsors, but the my brain, Phase. I couldn't get Phase out. All I could think of was Binderlift, because they used to be Binderlift, which Phase stands for Patient Handling and Safety Experts. And what I love about all of their stuff, but in particular this booth this year, is they are allowing our participants to go through their free training to learn about patient handling. it's a lot of what you do, right? In EMS and as paramedics, it's a lot of moving people around. And this is about the mechanics and how to do it in a way that protects you physically and keeps you in your job.
Yep. That doesn't only protect the providers back, but the patients as well. And CAPC approved CME credits. It's free to access. It's not very product focused. It's more functional mechanics and movement. And they still do mention some other optional lifting devices, such as the Binder Lift device, the Manger Elk device. And they're providing a free field trial for any agency that wants to get their hands on this, because I've seen agencies that when they really try something out and get that hands-on experience, they never want to go back to how the old ways of doing it, using an old bed sheet or trying to lift under people's armpits again. And Rob Lawrence brought up the fact that yesterday that when his service in the UK, they had implemented these on every ambulance. When he came over to the US and the Richmond Ambulance Authority, they used this. One of their first patients said they felt like it was such a dignified experience. They put these inflatable bags under the patient, and it lifted them up with little to no effort. And that patient wrote a $10,000 check and wanted to make sure that expressed their appreciation for having for that experience. So it was a great story from Rob yesterday.
Yeah. Ninth Brain is another one of our returning sponsors. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
All good. We'll bring up Ninth Brain here, and they have featured. You can get in touch with Bradley Hughes, a great guy that can give you an overview of what the Ninth Brain solution can really do, from forms and checklists to a learning management system. If you're at all thinking about a safety management system, they have risk assessments, as well as we know the whole world of workforce scheduling can be a challenge, and it brings all of that under one umbrella. So they have a lot of clients that have had success and implemented tools based on what the clients want. And they've added tools along the way, from quality improvement trackers to form builders, employee health records. So a great opportunity here to check out Ninth Brain and connect with Bradley.
And one thing I love about Ninth Brain is how much fun they have. Like they all have great titles. They're so customer focused. A lot of companies say they're customer focused, but Ninth Brain really, really is. So I encourage people to sign up and just see what they have to offer.
Absolutely. Let's bring up our friends at Newton 360, especially since today we've got Scott Moore on the line here to talk about his presentation. But I love that Scott, with his expertise and background in EMS operations, his background in human resource law, and his expertise in human resource management, has developed a platform, Newton 360, to have integration between your scheduling system, your PCR system, and bring all that data together for your managers and supervisors so they can make sure they're connecting with people. And from the way I understand it, is to make sure people aren't getting overlooked, right? Something happens traumatically, making sure people actually touch base. Did they lose a family member lately? Making sure that the folks on your leadership team know that these things are happening to your frontline providers, and making sure that they're checking in on them, having conversations, and providing feedback. So such a great tool. And Scott's always generous with his time. Such an incredible person. So if you want a demo of this, he's offered his Calendly link, and you can set up a demo to learn more about what this performance management and tracking system could do to improve the experience for your providers.
Especially since everybody's such a distributed workforce, in this
Exactly.
in this industry, and so to have this at your fingertips is such a great tool. And I remember when I worked with Scott for his presentation in the fourth annual, and he talked about how some people only talk to their subordinates maybe once a year, maybe twice a year, and
Or when there's a problem.
yeah, exactly. And that's just,
Right.
that's a recipe for disaster. And, you can't wonder why you're having problems with retention if that's how it's going. So this is an excellent tool for people to use to manage and help people feel cared for.
And I'm looking at my notes from Dr. Candace McDonald's talk on recruitment, retention, and engagement, and her research showing that 38% of people reported being satisfied in the workforce. I mean, that's such a low number. And how do we engage the folks that are satisfied, and also the folks that are in the middle that could be drawn in either direction?
Yeah. Before we go to our panel, I'd love to just do a shout out to Fire Rescue TV, because we are streaming live over their digital network to about 400 to 500 fire stations, correct?
Fire
And
EMS
as well as
stations,
their
yeah.
platforms. And as well as their social media platforms. But we really appreciate our partnership with Martin and what he's doing to ensure better communication within organizations.
And especially as we engage more generations, they don't all communicate in one way. People have overloaded email boxes. People might not just get the memo. They might not check their mailbox, right? You've got to communicate in different ways. They might not read the company newsletter if you have one, or your internal newsletter. So this is just another form of engaging with your employees to communicate information, because we all know in the absence of information, what do people do? They make up stories, and it's not always
They
the
make up
most
stuff,
empowering stuff.
and it's not usually good stories, that's for sure.
One more shout out here to NAMI HP, the National
Oh, yes.
Association of Mobile Integrated Health Providers. Such an incredible, relatively young organization in the last 3 years. They have put on 2 in-person summits a year, and they have a in-person summit coming up at EMS World in Las Vegas. So there's information on that. They have an ultra low cost membership to support their organizations, and you'll get access to guides in order to draw on the experience of hundreds of mobile integrated health programs. So if you're at all interested in community paramedicine, this is an organization to connect with. Some of the sharpest minds that I've had a chance to meet were part of this group, and they will want you to help draw from the experiences of other successful programs in the country and watch out for the pitfalls that others have faced. And there's also an interview with Dr. Victoria Reinhardt there. So that was recently recorded with GEMS. All right.
Yeah, and I just want to say one more time, thank you to our sponsors. Every time we go through these booths, I'm blown away by the number of high quality free giveaways that are available, whether it's the information that you just went over, free trials, like so many great opportunities to get what you need and learn more.
All right. Well, we'll go back to our virtual exhibitor hall a little bit later. We want to get to our panel. They've been waiting in the green room. We'll bring them on. Welcome, Scott Moore. Scott, thanks for being here.
Hello, hello.
Hi, Scott.
Hi
It's
there.
always a pleasure to have you here. And thanks for joining in with our live panel tonight.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be back again. This is fabulous. Fabulous. I don't know, fifth year in a row? Fourth. Yeah,
I'm not sure. Were you in 2019 when we were pre-pandemic?
I want to say, I'm not sure. Yeah, I want to say yes, but I do remember saying a virtual conference. Come on. It's like, because
I'm pretty sure.
So nobody had been doing it. And I remember commenting in 2020 where I was like, you guys saw, it's almost like you knew what was about to happen. And now, as we talk about getting, professional, all of today's sessions in some form or fashion really talked about sort of the importance of professional development and getting, being the kind of employer that brings information to people so that they can, if you are the source of that development, they'll continue to come to that faucet every time. And this is just one of those ways in which you can do that in a way that's affordable and decent, content and development. Not only that, but all the other resources that you all provide. I know, your work has been extensive. So, I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I want to also bring in Corey Key. Corey is the battalion chief of the Fairfax County Fire Rescue Department. Welcome, Corey. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Hello. Thank you for having me. Hello.
Corey, thanks again for putting your presentation together today. For today, can you share a little bit about who you presented with? And I mean, what a fantastic jam-packed session you put together of statistics and like models and possible options and plans. So I'd love to hear a little bit from you about even what the experience was like putting all that data together in the plans, if you don't mind sharing.
Oh, absolutely. So the gentleman that was with me is Lieutenant Josh Wallace. He is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. We're very lucky to have him. I asked him to fill out one of the forms, and he was so busy he wasn't able to, unfortunately. So I apologize for that. But yes, phenomenal instructor. He's very rock solid, strong employee. I can't say enough good things about him. He's great. And he did a lot of portions of the data collection. He had a different view. I had a different view. We got together and both of us kind of melded all of our information together.
Yeah.
Our department itself loves collecting data. So we have tons of data about almost anything that you can think of. So we took advantage of it and tapped into some of that data and saw the numbers and decided to start moving forward with trying to figure out how to restructure some things so that the ALS, I'm not going to say problem, but the challenge with ALS providers and stuff, we could alleviate that somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's very like forward thinking. And Scott, I know you talk a lot about engagement, and you have seen systems that are very large, probably the size of like Corey's in Fairfax County, and you've seen much smaller ones. But I thought what was interesting about Corey's is that they surveyed employees, they got information about what they wanted. And then even in the survey, they asked a question later, well, if there was a pay bump incentive, and then you saw the numbers just like not skyrocket, but they went up significantly. Would love to hear your thoughts about like the idea of reaching out to employees' data. You're a data person as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll tell you, Fairfax, right, if I'm not mistaken, they've participated in this event before, and they're always a really forward-thinking organization, as EMS, there's sort of that saying that if you've seen one EMS system, I think they're a really great example of that, and I won't pretend to be super familiar with them, but I will say that in all of the times that I've seen their folks talk, it has been largely data-driven. It has been very ahead of where I see most folks. And I do believe that we have all of these systems that are collecting data, and the data that we tend to look at are patient care outcomes and that kind of stuff. When in fact, if the largest issue facing almost any EMS organization right now is workforce, well, why aren't we using the data that, is pretty readily available? And again, I think that's what impressed me about when I watched their session. I also, frankly, have to say that I loved they call themselves problem solvers right off the bat, and that was the first one of the first things that I think about. Right, that goes to mentality of your leadership team, right? That says that's who we are as a team, is we're problem solvers, and so solvers, not problem analyzers. They're problem solvers, right? So it's, hey, we are going to fix this. It is within our power, and we have all of the information that we need. It's available to us. So I applaud that. I just think, again, if you want something different, you have to try something different. And that's one of the things that has impressed me in about the years that I've seen their presentations, is that they're always continuing to innovate. So,
yeah. One thing, if I may, Corey, when I was watching it today, I just kept noticing that everything was about helping the providers. Like it was being driven by the providers feeling like they need relief. And that was just very cool to see. And then the other thing is I watched Scott's presentation right after yours. And I'm like, oh, they executed a plan just so Scott was like, your whole presentation was about how do you execute a plan, and a plan isn't a to-do list, right? Which is such a misconception that people have, is that it's like, oh, I have a to-do list. No, that's not a plan.
To-do list feels like being in survivor mode.
Yeah, I always sort of joke, and this was something that really changed the way I tackled things, or this idea that you don't ever put more than 3 things on a list, because in reality, and I don't know if you've ever done this, I crack up. I used to put stuff on the list so I could cross it off the list at the exact same time, just for the record, which is completely asinine, right? There's literally no point in that. But when I have two lists, one that's sort of the long-term projects and then one of what do I have to get done tomorrow. And it is incredibly satisfying to be able to check the three things off, and understanding that I'm not going to, if I walk in with 20 things on my list and leave with 20 things on my list, which is what happens to most people, I sort of, feel like I'm always in this catch-up mode. But if I walk in with like, these are the three things I realistically think I could tackle, you're right. Yeah, that to-do list is the things that you need to do. A project management plan is something completely different. And so, a lot of people, I don't know if it's like when I was a CEO or an ops manager, I used to sit in my car for just a moment before I walked into work, and I would turn the radio off and I would just go like, because I knew the second I walked through the door, we were going to like, boom, it's like jumping into a river and then it would spit me out the other side at some point, and I would get back in my car and I'd sit there for another minute and go like, what in the heck just happened? And so that's, changing some of that is, sort of, that's something that affirmatively, and I won't claim responsibility. I hired a consultant to help me work through some of that stuff, right? As to how to be more intentional about what we do.
And the overwhelm is so real. Like it can feel so real, I should say. I know, Lisa, you and I have conversations a lot about the idea of stress and overwhelm and how it's perceived by the individual, and to them it looks real, because it certainly can feel real in the moment.
Yeah, and I just think there's a difference between overwhelm and overload. Like there's the reality of I have too many things to do and the number of hours that I have to do them, and that's a fact, right? There's overload. I think overwhelm is innocently something we add under those conditions where we start overthinking and overanalyzing and worrying about our worrying and worrying about not getting things done and worrying about things falling through the cracks. That's what is, in my work anyway, that's what I call overwhelm. There are the facts. Overload, too many, you have the number of things to do and the number of hours to do them in. And then, when you can look at them from that kind of factual way, it takes all the personality or all the personal judgment out of it. And you can just be with the facts and kind of move through that way. So that's a way I think is really helpful to distinguish it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've seen a lot of people who, one, you feel overwhelmed when you set an unrealistic plan in the first place, right? That's when you will end up overwhelmed, is when you're like, oh, I'm going to accomplish all of this stuff. And the reality is the average leader has about 20 minutes spare in any week to do anything new. So if realistically your intent is to tackle a project, don't look at your team knowing a project realistically is going to be 3, 4, 6, 12, 15, 40 hours and think that it's going to be achieved in 2 weeks. If in fact any one of your team members has 40 hours extra to hang around, well, then you're probably not utilizing them in the way you need to. Don't set them off on a path that, when you're operating from a defensive position, you're not going to be operating in your peak performance. And if you set realistic expectations and hold people, I talk a lot about cadence of accountability. There's a reason for that, right? Is making sure that you're helping them stay on track. And so I just think, again, this is one of those things where, all of us do it. That, I have a whiteboard behind me that used to have a bunch of items on it, and I finally stopped because I realized at one point I looked at it and I was like, oh, those things have been up there for 4 years.
Yeah.
So now that has stickers from different ambulance services and stuff. Why? Because, again, it makes sense to have 3 things on the board, right?
And if you're just joining us now, folks, we are here with our daily debrief on the EMS Leadership Summit, day number 4, joined on our live panel with Scott Moore and Corey Key, both featured speakers from today's EMS Leadership Summit. And Corey, maybe you could tell people a little bit about, if they haven't seen your presentation yet, what they could look forward to, especially being, I think you've got a unique background in being a fire-based EMS service that's very large. And folks, if you have any questions, feel free to comment below and we'll take your questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So we broke it down into, okay, what is the problem? And the problem was that we had a reduction in the amount of ALS providers that we had, and there was a tremendously high amount of burnout rate. And so myself and Lieutenant Josh Wallace, we said, okay, what can we do with this? Can we reduce the amount of time that it takes to train paramedics and get them out on the street, or is there something else? And through this kind of challenge and looking for solutions, we came across Advanced EMT, and it was kind of presented to us a little bit beforehand, but we didn't really look at it as in depth as we have now. And so just from there, we started looking into, okay, well, does anybody actually want to do this? What can they actually do? What do paramedics actually do? And not what they actually do as far as their skills practice, but when we get into the numbers, what on calls every single day do paramedics actually do? And what are the percentages of that? And then we looked at that and found that in general, an advanced EMT versus a paramedic, very small amount of paramedic skills being performed overall. And I say this in my presentation, this is in no way, shape, or form saying that we don't need paramedics, because we absolutely do. And if you see the presentation, you'll see that it's not trying to phase out paramedics. And it's also not trying to phase out EMT basics. There's absolutely a place for all of those certifications. But we found out that one of the big ones was the time frame that we had to catch the people. So within the first year after leaving recruit school, 50% less people decided that they would not like to participate in becoming an advanced care provider of any type. By year 2, it was an 80% attrition rate. So the sweet spot is we had to get them before year 1. And to do the volume that we need to come up with other solutions. And so that was a lot more behind why we started looking more into the advanced EMT.
I think it's such a great example of looking at the data. Where do people fall off, and then saying, okay, well, why can't we just do that a bit sooner? Engage people when they seem to be statistically open to the idea. So brilliant job, like putting that.
I think
together.
so too.
Yeah.
We also
Really
have
brilliant.
Some other agencies in the state of Virginia. They were very interested in our presentation and data. So we're actually going to be on the road traveling a little bit, doing some presentations and stuff like that throughout Virginia right now. And then we might expand later on. But as far as the checklists, start small, then add more. So,
and I feel like this also points to one of the questions we had by email. We often ask our audience when they register for the summit, tell us what's their biggest struggle right now, or what's the biggest opportunity they're seeing. And people are frustrated. One person writes in about the lack of opportunity for advancement. And I feel like that's what you're pointing to, is there you can have multiple levels of advancement this way, and you could restructure things so it engages people.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a big motivating factor also, just as you said, because if you're an EMT basic and then that large leap to paramedic, not just, I mean, it's a whole learning process and reformulating of mindset. And it's a tremendous leap. Whereas actually, to Scott's point, the advanced EMT is a smaller chunk. It's a smaller and incremental,
smaller step,
getting better and things like that. So smaller checks and to get things done, and then it allows them time to learn to be an ALS provider and to think like an ALS provider, and then we can add on all the stuff from paramedic after they've been out in the field and kind of gotten their feet together. And what we're finding from some neighboring jurisdictions, and I took a lot of data from Loudoun County. I just have to throw them out there and give them a shout out. They were finding that the quality of the paramedic that they were getting through this program was so far superior than what was previous.
Yeah.
And so we really took that and we're like, yes, this is something that we really want to look into and do. So
smart, especially when you have a smaller pool. Well, not smaller, when you give people an opportunity to take one step. And then out of all those that took that step, they get a feel for it. They get their feet wet in it.
Yep.
And then you're right. It's a huge leap. It's a 10x amount of hours investment in people and time and energy. And just for somebody to say they want to make that commitment and then get halfway through it and have a little bit of remorse because they haven't maybe had those experiences. It's smart.
Yeah. Not to mention they have,
Well,
you know,
just one comment I'd love to make.
Please,
Sorry,
yeah.
Scott. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, one comment. No, not at all. Like in Massachusetts, we don't tend to use a lot of AMTs. And one of the things that we were running into is that same issue about opportunities for career advancement. And so one of the things that we did at one of the organizations that I worked at was we decided to break our EMT category into an EMT 1, 2, and 3, a paramedic 1, 2, and 3, a dispatcher 1, 2, and 3, because one, one of the issues that we had was, an EMT would come into the organization and, I'd get assigned with Robbie, who was my field training person or my first partner out of, when I'm still too junior to be on my own, and I'd work with Robbie and say at some point I'd begin to really, I'd start to get more senior and start to understand and would be in a position to potentially move into a senior role. But because I liked working with Robbie, I would say, I just don't feel comfortable to take on that role. Well, we needed to incentivize people to move up. So we essentially said, okay, well, we're going to take that EMT, which is now one category with a pay band of whatever, $17 an hour to $22 an hour. And we broke it into these 3 categories so that we could then create really what were a pay band of, let's say, 17 to 18 was an EMT 1. And then we broke it so that there were incentives and opportunities for people to get that win of moving from one level to the next level. And it also solved some of our scheduling issues where we're like, geez, Robbie's actually clinically strong, but Scott knows the area. When we had, okay, if you want to staff an ambulance, you have to have a minimum of an EMT or a paramedic of 3, which means you can have a 2 and a 1. You can have a 1 and a 3. But you can't have a 1 and a 1. So you can never have 2 brand new EMTs working together on a truck. And again, you incentivize them to move to that next level. And your 3 was the person who could train brand new people, who could, and maybe it also, you can create levels within a level that may feel like you have nowhere to go, but there really are. You could become an IC, you could become an FTO, and when you're moving people to promotion, I'm not going to select a supervisor who isn't a 3, right? I'm just not going to do it. And so you build in what really is a much better depth of opportunity within your organization. And you create a path for people. And I always say, paint the picture, because don't expect people to know the roadmap. We're in a time where if I gave you a Rand McNally road book, nobody could read the damn thing, right? They want you to have GPS. So do career GPS for them and tell them how to get there.
Career GPS. I love that.
I like that.
Yeah. And I remember you.
That could be your next book there, Scott.
I remember you mentioning this idea of different levels, and until you broke it down in this way, the way you did now, I mean, I really see that working. I had a conversation today with one of my police officer colleagues talking about crisis intervention training, and that's at least a 40-hour training. Why aren't we encouraging our people to go after that level of training? Because that can be so invaluable, especially if you maybe are in a situation where the police aren't there, to give people, again, more clinical tools, more ways to verbally de-escalate.
And pins and badges and all, these are those kind of things that I say. I remember when I was coming up that we had years of service pins, and it was a badge of courage, right? To have a 5 or a 10-year pin, right? And now if you have a crisis intervention group, they can have a different, and I'm not one for ornate, lots of jewelry on the thing, but I'm saying you can create these achievement levels that provide ways to differentiate folks amongst your staff to show levels of achievement that really, again, sometimes in our service early on, just surviving another couple of years was a pretty big challenge. I mean, it was a pretty big accomplishment, but, I couldn't agree more. I think that, that jump from EMT to paramedic is huge. To have that, why we never in our state really use that level doesn't make sense to me. And again, there's actually a great role for advanced EMTs in my opinion, 90% of what occurs, from an ALS perspective, actually is the stuff that could be handled airway and so
Ease, fluid.
yeah.
Scott, would you mind talking a little bit about a project you're involved with the American Ambulance Association and the Newton 360
Yep, sure.
annual turnover study? Because we often point to that, and you've quantified the cost of direct turnover, and
Yep.
we noticed that last year's numbers jumped by almost $2,000 in direct costs. Not even to mention the indirect costs being astronomical. But I feel like people can wrap their heads around those direct costs a little bit.
Yeah. So, and by the way, the survey for this year is open. We just extended it because we were finding, actually, it was funny, in the first week or two, there was very low response rate. And so we're like, gosh, we better extend this maybe, and then within like the next week, we had seen almost a 6-time response rate. So it was kind of like people finally went, hey, but so if you have an opportunity, you can just go ahead and do in any search engine the AAA Newton 360 turnover survey. You'll find that turnover survey. And if you would participate, it'd be great. The one thing I will say, and myself and Dr. Doverspike and Dr. Miguel from John Carroll University, we sort of say maybe we're asking the wrong people, right? A lot of times we're asking EMS leaders to complete this survey, and maybe really we should be surveying EMTs and paramedics and so forth. But we started the survey in 2018, and we did take off the 2020 year because for obvious reasons. But interestingly, last year's turnover survey, while yes, that dollar figure did jump, and frankly, we just report out what the information, we don't get a lot of depth, because what we've learned with the surveys, you add too many questions, your N number drops off, because people go, it's kind of like if you've ever done where you stick on the line for a brief survey and you're like, all right, you hang up. If they say, will you stick on the line for a 2-question brief survey, you stay on. Yeah. So what we saw, though, and this will surprise a lot of people will say to me, oh, turnover is worse than it's ever been. And I go, actually, turnover is exactly where it was in 2018 when we started doing the survey. And so a lot of folks go, wait, no way, that can't be. Well, the problem may be larger, right? Because maybe there's we weren't measuring in 2018, we weren't measuring the number of open FTE positions. We have been measuring that for the last couple of years, and I will tell you, the number of open positions has dropped also. So this is a function of now a lot of people are paying attention to it, right? And so as a result, people weren't really, there wasn't quite the focus on workforce that there was that there is now in 18. And so the numbers are exactly where they were prior to the pandemic. That doesn't mean, frankly, that we should stop working on it. In fact, what I think is this was always a problem. And what we have now, in my opinion, are fewer people, folks like me, were willing to do 70, 80 hours a week. One of the things that we know is the number one thing that drives people, keeps people in a job is pay and benefits. The number two thing now for this generation is work-life balance, something EMS has been historically really wonderful or awful at. And so what we're finding is, a lot of people, and we find this in leadership too, hey, you want to be the supervisor, we'll pay you an extra, $1, $2 an hour. And people are like, yeah, no, I'm good, man. You can keep that position. You can keep that money. And I will just stay in my job as an EMT or paramedic. So we're in the middle of the study now. Yes, the numbers did jump, and I attribute a lot of that to what I think was a pretty excessive jump in salary, because we did see about a 25 to 30% increase in wages in this country in almost all positions. And I know anecdotally that EMS also saw a pretty substantial jump in wages, but the cost of mere cost of doing things like training, right? Background searches and all that stuff really has jumped again pretty significantly. So, and just cautiously, that cost of turnover is really the cost of hire, the lost money for hiring, not really what is SHRM or the Department of Labor's estimate of, a third of an annual salary, or depending upon the position, the higher they get. If you lose the CEO, it's 1.5 to 2 times their annual salary. So, yeah, I don't know, that's probably 800 words more than you were looking for, but
I love the insight. Yeah.
We get paid by the word, so we offer a lot of them.
Scott, do you think, and I don't mean to put you on the spot with this question, do you think that the pay bump that you noticed was a one-time healthcare workforce bonus with a lot of American Rescue Plan money, a lot of, I feel like state governments pointing to, oh, we're going to bonus our employees, but we know those bonuses are one-time bumps, and then they're not necessarily percentage increases in salary.
Yeah, it's a great question. I get asked a lot if there's any real salary survey data from EMS or fire, public safety, and truthfully, there used to be one a couple of years ago. GEMS used to do a survey on wages, but no one's really doing a wage survey now. I think that what, at least, and I'll say this is anecdotally, and I don't know how many other HR, employment attorney consultants there are that really focus only on EMS. What I'll say is I don't know a lot of them. I think but what I will say anecdotally is I believe the bump in wages we've seen is not a one-time thing. I believe it has been because once you give people additional wages, it's damn near impossible to take those wages away. And especially when I and everybody else believe that those were wages that frankly we should have been paying in the first place. So I think this is a function of, and unfortunately, most of the monies that we've seen go into wages have come from taxpayers or have come out of other margins in private, for-profit or not-for-profit organizations, and not because of American Rescue Plan money. I saw most of that American Rescue Plan money go into infrastructure, stuff that had to happen, PPE, and yes, maybe some COVID sick time pay, that kind of stuff. But outside of that, probably the biggest thing that I will see people spending money on in the next year will be the new OSHA rules that have just dropped in February, that are going to significantly impact the first rules in EMS and fire in 44 years. Wow. So, that's the one that's going to really drive people's costs up dramatically.
Since you did hint to that, can you drop us a name or a link for folks to
Yeah. So certainly, you can. I did in fact, I've done several. I did a webinar today in where was I today? Minnesota. I'm doing two Tuesday, one in Wisconsin and one in South Carolina. So you can just certainly go to the AAA's website. There's a webinar where we just go over the entire. There's sort of and it's a 30,000-foot view. But you can also just type into Google OSHA emergency response rule, and you will get to the rule itself. Just a fair warning, it's 253 pages in the Federal Register, 608 pages in the pre-published version. And it's really everything. It incorporates 22 NFPA standards and includes things such as doing community vulnerability assessments and having physical requirements. And there are new medical surveillance requirements, which will include it higher, and then every 2 years you'll have to do things like cardiac risk factors, including cholesterol, spirometry, musculoskeletal. Yeah, it is pretty substantial. Now, I know my friends at the IAFF have told us that they're largely in support of these, which again, how can you be against safety and EMS or fire? But what I would say is these are significant. Sprinkler systems in any new station after the rules pass that has sleeping quarters, sprinkler systems. Now, most new buildings, that is fire code, commercial buildings, but there are, a bunch of organizations where that's going to be pretty significant money. The right thing to do, but just pretty significant money.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And Lisa, I know we've got some more questions that have come in by email if you wanted to take a look.
Yeah, the one I wanted to ask Corey in particular is, we've had a lot of it's quite a few themes in all the questions and emails that we get. And one of the themes was, in my organization, there aren't a lot of titles, but I really want to show up as a leader. How do I do that if I don't have a specific title? And Corey, I know this is something you're pretty passionate about. And way back when we first met you was something that you were really at work on. So I wondered if you would mind speaking to that question.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is funny because when we met, that was kind of my big challenge. We'll just say challenge. But and you all coached me through it phenomenally. But and I'll never forget, I came in and I was very frustrated. There was so much lack of just motivation and direction and things that were going on. And you all said, well, who else can you team up with? And I was like, well, myself. And you're like, no. There's other people besides you in the department, I'm pretty sure. And I was like, well, yes, there are a few. And you all suggested I go out and find those people that want to help, same as me. And so I did. And again, we started off small, just a couple of people, and then it started to grow and get better and bigger. And now we have a lot of people that are grassroots leaders, and we help mentor them through all of that. And one of them you actually saw, Josh, is one that I'm mentoring, and we're in the I show you how, you do one with me, I do one with you, and we're at the I do one with you, and then it's going to turn into you do it, and it's working fantastically. I mean, it's phenomenal. So I can't thank you all enough, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Well, I love that term, grassroots leader, right? Like, you know, when you come into an organization and you're passionate about the work and you're passionate about making a difference, and finding other people who are like-minded is such an important step, because it can feel like the tide is going the other way sometimes. And so when you have, it's like having strong footholds, right? To be able to grow together with other people who are wanting more of an environment that really supports them, and it's not negative, and ain't it awful, right? It's like a different feel.
And Corey,
Yeah,
I love your willingness and your openness to consider different ideas and new ideas, and you were just willing to try it out, and you really had no qualms about that. You would just go forward, you'd try it out, you'd be open to a new idea, and it was a great honor to hear that, and to hear about the different successes you had and that over time. So yeah, appreciate you.
Yeah, it helped me, allow me to climb the ranks and get into more influential positions and set up more informal mentorship programs and start bringing more people into the fold. And then, it just kind of builds. But like you all were telling me, getting that and essentially initial snowball going is very challenging sometimes. But once you do, and it's on the right slope, I mean, it just keeps going and going. So,
and Scott, do you want to speak to that in what you've seen in other organizations, or maybe your experiences with helping people lead from any level, helping people understand that, you don't just need that gold badge to be considered a leader, that it can happen at any level?
Yeah, sure. So, I sort of was thinking as Corey's talking, one, when you put someone into a supervisor uniform, right, you just got to make sure it's not a costume for them, right? It's the uniform, it's the costume they always wear, right? Because it's funny to me that, to me, you hire the person who is the leader into a leadership role, and mentoring is critical to that, because there's a great statistic, and I want to say it's like, organizations that have good, solid mentoring programs, the retention on mentees is like 69%. The retention on mentors is 72%, right? So, I know the AAA, we just put together a mentor guide, and I also know like NEMT, I think, has their Lighthouse program. And, I guess what I'd say is, I don't care what you call it, right? If you're do not, like, the day you join the fire department, you sort of know the path to become chief, but don't presume that everybody understands, that you sort of know technically the path, but there's a lot of politics and there's a lot of other stuff on, it's the art form that you really want to work on. In my opinion, the science, that's pretty straightforward. The art form of leadership is something completely different. And I think it sounds like, when you're in a mentor-mentee relationship, that's where you really do learn, sort of where the two intersect. And so, I've seen great successes in organizations where they do use, a solid mentor program. I will say, I think those programs need to be documented. There needs to be a cadence of accountability with those folks, that there needs to be, what are you hoping to get out of it? What am I hoping to get out of it? And then having a mid mentor program evaluation, and then a final program with a recognition of, well, how long did we actually spend doing this? Because I think a lot of leaders, again, that I've got 20 minutes extra a week to do anything new, right? Saying to someone, because how do you get someone who feels like their lips are just above the waterline to take on something else? I go, well, actually, if you want to drain the pool a little bit, right? Or get somebody to help you float, right? That's kind of that thing. So, I as I said, I think Fairfax is on the front line of all of that. And, it's one of those is an opportunity. You go like, geez, when I travel, I want to go visit places. That's one of those places that, if I'm ever in that area, I want to go visit and just ride along for a day and see, geez, what is it that they're doing? Because it's working, right?
You're welcome anytime, Scott. And I have an extra bedroom if you need a place to stay. We got you covered.
Right. That's great. That's great. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, and you're all in Virginia, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I have a kid going to James Madison starting next year.
Oh,
so
great
I'm
school.
coming to Virginia pretty frequently. So I'll have to come by.
Good to go.
It's great to hear.
Wow.
And,
Sounds like a plan. We might all have to go together.
Now that would be fun.
Roger.
Yeah, we would not be doing a daily windup after that.
Oh, well.
I think if we could, just some final thoughts. I mean, there's so much I want to talk to both of you about. And I mean, Scott, while we've got you on the line, I mean, the amount of organizations you've been able to study with the turnover study, is there anything you can point to as far as in those with high levels of engagement? What are some things that maybe they're doing, or some things that spring to mind that you could maybe point to people towards?
Yeah, it's interesting this year that I saw, and I say in 23, I'll be interested to see what 24's survey measures 23. But in any event, what we saw last year when the survey was released, that out of the three, we look at part-time EMT, full-time EMT, part-time paramedic, full-time paramedic, supervisor, dispatcher. What we noticed out of almost all of the categories, with the exception of full-time paramedic, was the number one thing that drove turnover was career change, except for medics, which was wages, right? Which is interesting because most people point to wages as the number one thing that drives turnover. Well, just so we're clear, in 1990, when I started in EMS, I took $1 an hour pay cut from a grocery store, and I never gave it. And I don't know if wages used to be far better than they are now, but just so we're clear, most of the time, wages is not the thing driving people out of EMS. There just becomes this value proposition. We know the number one thing that drives engagement in an organization, and this is 30 years of Gallup research, is the relationship between the employee and the person that they view as their immediate supervisor.
Yep.
Right? For example, the best person I ever worked with is a guy named Ron Caranto. Ron was my COO when I was the HR director at a large company here in Boston. Ron now works for Acadian. And I have to tell you, if Ron called me tomorrow, I'd have to give a long, hard thought about that. It's kind of like when you think about it, when you're toasted, you've worked 70 hours this week and you're like, there is literally no way I am working. I don't care what they offer me, but they go, hey, the shift is with Ron. I'm like, oh, I could go in. I think I could, right? And that comes back to, it's about relationships. And Corey, you talked about this in your session, right? It's about developing relationships, and, it's not really about recognition. It's about what the recognition says about the relationship, right? If you had a spouse that came home once a year, or you had a dog that was like happy you were home once a year, you would probably, people wouldn't own pets, right? Actually, cat owners, you know exactly what that's like. Sorry, I know I'm going to get a lot of hate mail from cat owners. Sorry. I had my yellow lab with me today, and my yellow lab, right? He's like, oh my God, where you been? And I'm like, he's like, you look like you lost weight. And I'm like, no, I was at the mailbox. I've been gone for 30 seconds. He's like, something's different. I'm just so glad you're back. Right. So if your supervisors, right, are, say, when you're a leader, take a look at, do you look like you're having a good time? Or do you look like someone sentenced you to a period of time? I would say, like, look, make the job look fun. Make sure that it's not their burden to carry your water, right? That's yours. Your job is there to create relationships, foster relationships, to drive your employees to do the best work they can do, so that you in your job can do the best work that you can do, and the organization succeeds. So I look at this as a function of, if I were going to say there's one thing that organizations could do that would dramatically improve employee engagement, is to take a look at what your frontline supervisors are doing. I'm going to bet you that they engage their staff less than 6 to 8% of the time. And that's in organizations where they're all in the same building. Divest them of this stuff, right? What number of meetings do you attend in a week that you could probably eliminate? 50%, I'm going to bet at a minimum, you could eliminate, and your life would not only dramatically not change, it would probably get better. And take those people now and re-engage them into your job is to engage your staff, see them, make sure they have what they need, even if it is functionally just a, hey, how you doing? What's going on? Yes, I did hear about your loss of a family member. I am so terribly sorry. Or, hey, you hit your work anniversary. That is wonderful. We are so happy you're here, right? Like, just so you know, we're a better organization because you've been here for the last 12 months. And we think we'll be an even better organization when you're here 12 months from now. And so because again, at the end of the day, very few people go, geez, I am just like the old sheepdog and the wolf that are punching cards at the end of the day. See you later, Wilbur. All right. This is one of those things where you need to know that it matters that you showed up to work. And that, again, that's free. That costs absolutely nothing. But yet we spend more time worrying about, geez, did we get this report filed? Did that filed? That, frankly, nobody read. So,
Brilliant.
Yeah, well, maybe if it were brilliant, right? More people would be doing it, and then we wouldn't have a work problem.
Hey, it might be simple. It's not always easy for some people to wrap their heads around either.
Yeah.
So certainly some sage advice that you just dropped there. That people can definitely, including myself, hold up a mirror and figure out where can I do better when it comes to those areas.
Well, and this is one of the things that I say. I have this software product that I will tell you has met very, very sort of mediocre, lukewarm engagement. Why? Because I look at people and I go, look, you can buy Newton, and it will help you, just like if you decide you're going to get fit, buying a treadmill will make you fit.
Only if you use it.
12 months later, you can have that treadmill probably be at your curb, and it'll say free. But the fact of the matter is, again, it's only if you use it, and it's how you use it. And so this is about, I say, if you want to fix the problem, right? Once you decide you're going to fix the problem, then you find the tools that will help you do that. Corey's comment at the beginning, we're problem solvers, right? That's a different mentality. That is an organizational mindset that problems are not problems. They are things that we will overcome and move past. And that, by the way, is incredibly infectious for organizations. When you look at, like, when your people are like, oh my God, what are we going to do? The reality is these guys are like, no, we're going to fix the problem and we're going to move on.
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful.
Yeah. Before Corey goes and with his final thoughts, I just have to say, I think one of the biggest challenges for people in doing what you're talking about, Scott, is this massive misunderstanding that you pointed to, is that it's about the money. Mm-hmm. Every time we go to do a recruitment and retention seminar and we announce it on Facebook, we get 50 freaking comments, if not more.
Pay better.
Pay better, pay better, pay better, pay better, pay better, pay better, pay better. And we're like, yeah, we get that, but that's not why people are in EMS. That's not why people stay. That's not why people leave. Look at what's real. Look at the actual facts versus your interpretation of the facts. And that's what we are constantly up against, is this belief that it's something other than it is. And so, well, if it's about the money,
can't do anything about that, right? Budget's set in stone.
But if it's, hey, all I have to do is be nicer, kinder in relationship with the people who work with me, who work for me, thank them, don't think their paycheck is their thank you. Like, literally, that's all it takes. Well, then what am I going to blame? What am I going to do?
Oh, and by the way, we're paying 30% more now than we were 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I would, when people go, yeah, using your own information. Hey, by the way, our payroll has increased this much, or, and so, again, I think that's the kind of thing that, in the absence of a narrative, I heard it said a couple times, people create their own, and it may or may not be true.
Often not. Scott, I love that. Thank you for sharing. Corey, final thoughts, advice for folks that might be watching in the audience?
Final thoughts are, if anybody wants any of the information or any data that we have, we will share it all day long. Please contact me. The systems that we come up with are always modular, so that we can implement them as much or as little. If they're working, if they're not, we're constantly reevaluating. So my final thought is, whatever you're doing, don't give up on it. Just keep going. There is a solution somewhere. It may seem like there's not, but there is a solution somewhere. And if you just keep going with that, eventually you'll get there.
We love that. We love that tenacity that you so demonstrate well. So thank you for that. Thanks for being here, Corey. Thanks for highlighting your organization and your mentorship of the other provider that presented with you, so that you two could present some information that other organizations can pick up. Thanks for joining us, Scott Moore. It's always a pleasure to have you here. Thanks for coming back to the EMS Leadership Summit and sharing your wisdom with everyone.
Thank you both so much. We couldn't do it without you.
Really, really appreciate you doing this.
Yes, thank you all so much.
All right, guys. Thanks again for being here. We so appreciate that panel of speakers. Lisa, we have a whole lineup of sessions from today that are still available, including Ray Barashansky talking about emotional intelligence. And before we went live, we were chatting with Scott Moore. We were talking about, some of the sessions from today. And, Ray has such a great way of delivering content and pointing to a lot of it's about the frameworks of emotional intelligence, and it's not always about your IQ. That EQ can make a big difference in those relationship building skills.
And for anybody who heard what Scott's saying, what we say, and they're like, I'm not that way, watch Ray's talk, because he gives you access. You don't have to be, Mr. Hugger, right? Like there's a spectrum here, right? If this is an authentic appreciation of emotions and your emotions, and knowing when, how not to react. Like, it's just such a great presentation. I just highly recommend people take a look at that.
So I'm going to go ahead and share the lineup for not only today and tomorrow, but we can see in our playbook here that we have several sessions still available today. Tomorrow, our last day of the EMS Leadership Summit, right? We have our annual keynote speaker, Dr. Nadine Levick, that will be going live at 9 a.m., her session. And all the other sessions are available at 8 a.m. Eastern for 24 hours. Dr. Levick's will be available live and open. She's always on the cutting edge of EMS research and safety. Better, safer, and cheaper, right? She always says it doesn't have to mean it's going to be more money. It can actually be less money. And we so appreciate her looking at the trends in innovation. And it's funny to hear her talk a few years back about certain things, and then she'll come back to the next one and she'll have a picture of her in real life with that thing, the EV tolls, the different designs of ambulances. It's really a fantastic presentation, and I'm looking forward to everyone seeing Dr. Nadine Levick again.
And then we have Chris Smetana from, he's the president of Mind the Front Line, the founder of Mind the Front Line. He really is pioneering it, I think. I mean, I know he's not the first, but he's looking for ways to really help frontline folks in and finding resources. And his organization is really terrific. And this presentation where he shares about a new course for mental health leadership in public safety, like having taken care of our frontline be the priority of leadership, right? And he shares about his own journey and what he's dealt with in his career, and it's a really very powerful talk.
Yeah, we so appreciate him returning to the EMS Leadership Summit and giving his advice now, being in this role of indexing all of the mental health support that is out there from coast to coast for first responders and putting programs together He's just so passionate about that topic, and we're happy to see the conversations changing, that people are embracing these ideas and preparing people for those challenging situations ahead of time, and making sure we have culturally competent people that know our industry and know how to support our first responders.
Yeah.
Next up, Julianne Stevenson, a very passionate educator and advocate. She founded a software company, Sterling Credentials, after decades of helping as a program, being a program director for a paramedic program. And her software platform really creates an experience is built around the experience of the student and of the program. And in her talk, she draws on her experience in leadership roles and education. So if you're an educator out there, do not miss Julianne Stevenson and her talk and sage wisdom. She relates it back to gardening, and it's a very different presentation, which I think is good, and it's packaged in a way that you can draw on her many years of experience. So we appreciate
Well,
it.
and I love when people use metaphors like that, because sometimes it lands so differently when you hear a metaphor, and it's visual, and it just shows her excellence as an educator in the way that she presents it. So it's
Spot
really
on.
great.
Why don't
Yeah.
you tell us a little
And
bit
then
about Ankush?
Ankush is a very good friend of mine, also a coach. He's located in the UK. He and I go back 2014. We met in a leadership program, not a leadership, a coaching program. I went to London to do, and just an amazing coach. And now he runs a coaching school for coaches in the UK, and it's always sold out. I mean, he's just terrific. But in this talk, he and I talk about this idea of who are you being, because leadership is not about doing, it's really about who you're being. And so we look at what are the elements of being that will have you be an effective leader, and really bring out the best in the people around you, bring out the best in yourself and the people around you. And it was just really a pleasure spending time with him, and because he has really delved deep into this for himself about being, and he shares some really cool stories about himself and how it's transformed his life.
And if you're asking yourself, what the heck does that mean? What do you mean being? What do you mean, who am I being? Because I have said that in the past, like many years ago, when I was first asked that, I was like, what does that even mean? Watch that talk, and you will get how you come across how your way of being and how much of an impact it can have on other people. So really,
Yeah.
really great topic.
Just real briefly, if you don't mind me just saying, when you think about like if you've ever gone to a restaurant and you've had a server that is just taking good care of you and completely being of service, and seeing if you need anything, and like there's a way of being that server has. And then we've all had the experience of a server who's just going through the motions, right?
Or
Like putting your food down, not being mean or not being, but just going through the motions. And there's a very different experience. And we don't recognize that that's a being. That's the state of being behind the actions, behind or underneath the things that are being done. And that's really what we explore.
Brilliant. I love that analogy. And next up, a session that's available all week, actually, in this session is Dr. Molly McCann-Pinio from the Northwell Center for EMS. And really, she is highlighting what her research team has been doing since 2015. And as somebody that was not a clinical person, as an epidemiologist, as somebody looking at research and capturing stories, both quantitative and qualitative stories, and making it peer-reviewed, she has put together a fantastic presentation about the experiences of women in EMS. And so if you're interested at all in a perspective about what the women that might be going through a pregnancy, what women might be experiencing in their day-to-day lives, she has published that study thanks to the Northwell Center for EMS. And you can go, and I'll just share briefly here. You can go into the virtual exhibitor hall, and we have all of those studies available for free and open access. So if you click on the Northwell Health booth, we've got the the booth here. Her session is actually in here as well. It's available all week because it's such an important topic. And there are many different peer-reviewed journals and studies here about those experiences, and some great clinical and more experiential factors of EMS and EMS experiences. So big shout out to Northwell Health for letting us have a research corner in our virtual exhibitor hall.
Absolutely. And last but not least, Dr. Jack Pransky is his presentation is tomorrow, and there aren't enough words to describe the awesomeness that is Jack Pransky. He is world renowned in the field that I'm in. He has been for 30 years studying this idea of really how to work in ways that are consistent with how our mind works, and really helping people to tap into their own wisdom. And I had the privilege of doing a retreat with him. My husband and I went and did a retreat that he delivered last fall, and I discovered a whole nother level of listening and interacting with people that I didn't even know was possible. And so I asked Jack if he would be willing to present. This is a guy who, he's semi-retired. He really doesn't present very often, other than, that he just doesn't. And he said absolutely, because when he heard it was EMS, he said it would be my privilege.
Oh,
And so I
great.
really hope that people watch that, because if you think you know how to listen, you do, but there's a whole nother possibility. And it is transformational when you understand how to listen beyond the words and beyond your thoughts. And I'm not going to say anything else about it, because the
Okay.
session itself is truly transformational.
Great. Well, thank you for putting that together and getting Jack in the lineup of speakers. It's such a great perspective to have. So
Yeah, he's
so
awesome.
that's tomorrow's session. All sessions are available tomorrow at 8 a.m. Eastern. The only one that premieres at 9 a.m. live is Dr. Nadine Levick, so you can tune in and watch that live. And I know she will be commenting away in the live stream there. So, folks, what a great debrief today. We had such a nice panel, such great experience that was shared. Day 4 speakers we have are still available until 8 a.m. Eastern. If you haven't already grabbed your all access pass, remember, not only do you get lifetime access to all of these speaker sessions from the 5th EMS Leadership Summit, you also get the Honorable But Broken premiere tomorrow night. You get a ticket to that virtual premiere. So if you go to our exhibit hall and you click on the booth 7 here, I'll present it here in a second. You'll be able to watch our premiere, first virtual live streaming premiere this week. We had one on Wednesday and Thursday. We went on Thursday yesterday. Geez. And we've got one tomorrow evening. So definitely tune in to that. And then if you click on the booth 7 here, you can purchase your ticket, or if you're an all access pass holder or you've already purchased a ticket, you can log in right here. We've piped this all through our virtual live studio and our Zoom Enterprise account, and it really came across beautifully. People that have been just clamoring to see this film, we've been talking about it for the last year and a half. It's finally making its way around the country at local premieres. This is the first virtual premiere, and we can't thank Bryony Gilby and the team behind that documentary, really helping us tell our story of what people went through in the pandemic, the state in which EMS has been operating in for years, and the cracks that really started to show up with the pandemic, and not only all the problems, but also what are the solutions and what's being done.
Yeah, and one of the things that in many of the daily debriefs this week has come up is the need for the public to understand what EMS is really all about. Like, not just the misconception of ambulance drivers or people who have needed an EMT or a paramedic. They get it, or at least have some sense, but
Right.
most people don't realize that EMS gets the majority of 911 calls, the vast majority of 911 calls. People think of fire and police, but in reality, EMS gets most of those calls. And what does that mean? And what, when you're going from one call to the next. So, this this is an opportunity not only for EMS to watch this brilliant film, but bring your friends and family, have other people know about this and share it with them. They can buy a ticket for $15, and that all that that comes from ticket sales will go to the charity supporting the Honorable But Broken film.
And invite
So
the elected officials too. If you know elected officials, invite them. They want to hear from their constituents, you, and they need to know the realities of what's happening. And they do it in such a delicate way. And I think that's what people were nervous about, was how is this going to come across? How is it going to portray EMS providers and professionals? And I think they hit it out of the park with emotionally connecting stories told in a way that that people want to rally behind. People wanted to know in the Q&A, what can we do? It's like we're preaching to the choir here for the people that are here. We know that this is the situation. So it was
and we are going to have Bryony, yes?
Yes.
Will
so
she
we'll
be
have
there?
a live Q&A for the last 30 minutes. So about an hour showtime, runtime, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, and then we'll have a half an hour with Bryony, the director and one of the producers behind the film, for the private showing.
Yeah, so I recommend it. I've been sharing a lot on social media just for folks who, maybe aren't in EMS, but hey, everybody needs to know about this, because this isn't an EMS problem.
Right.
This is
this is going to be everyone's
an
problem.
issue for all of us. Yes, because if you're somewhere and you need to go to the hospital, or you need medical attention,
An emergency, right? You
who's
need a
gonna help
paramedic. You want them to
that's
show
right.
up. You don't want it to take 2 hours.
Yeah, and that's a reality in many places. So,
Great.
anything else for you before we end for today?
Folks, I just encourage you, if you've considered getting an all access pass, so you have lifetime access to all of our speaker sessions that we've put together this week. Over 32 speakers we're up to now. Consider getting that all access pass before it ends. The price we announced is going to go up to $397. Still worth it for that amount of sessions, but currently the price is $97. So make sure you take us up on the offer before that price bump, before the price goes up. NEMSMA approved CME credits. So if you are at all interested in a credential as an EMS leader, NEMSMA has, and the American College of Paramedic Executives has, a credentialing process, and these are NEMSMA approved continuing education credits. We've got MP3s in our app, as well as all the high definition videos. So lots of bonuses, lots of great reasons to grab your all access pass before that price goes up. And I think that's it. Lisa, thanks again for all of your work with this. Thanks for being here, for everyone watching. And we look forward to seeing more folks tomorrow on our final daily debrief and our grand prize drawing. So make sure you enter that grand prize drawing in the before operational stress booth at emsleadershipsummit.com/exhibit.
And make sure you visit all of those exhibit booths, because every single one of them has some treasure that you're going to want, and you can access that just by going to emsleadershipsummit.com/exhibit, and just hover over each one and click on it and see what's available, and make sure you get in that grand prize drawing. We really want people to have the opportunity to learn more about before operational stress, as well as all the other great booths and great material that's available, including ours.
Yeah, right. Our exhibitor booth. We host a 3-day EMS Leadership Live, a leadership intensive program that folks can join from anywhere in the world. We've had folks from multiple countries join us, and it's not like watching a webinar, right? You are live, front row experience. We have a wall of video screens, and we get to have everyone have a front row seat. And the cool thing is that people have said what they most got out of some of our trainings is they realize that their problems aren't so unique. They're not stuck in the echo chamber of where they are in their geographic area, and no travel, no dealing with airports, no hassles. You get to sleep in your own bed at night. So check us out at EMS Leadership Live. There's a special discount for folks that are interested in our virtual exhibitor hall. So with that, we'll see everybody tomorrow.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night. See you
Stay safe.
tomorrow.